Welcome to Situations and Conversations. I'm Renee, and I appreciate you joining us today. You know, this is a show created with you in mind, our community, incorporating my 5 E's, which I love to tell you about: empower, enlighten, educate, elevate, and of course, entertain, which is exactly what we are here to do. So let's get started. Today's situation involves sex. Oh, I said it, the S word. That's right, we're talking about sex. Most people think that they know about it, and others are very curious but don't seem to want to ask, including our young people. And with there being so much out there online, TV, movies, and whispers all about sex, I thought that we should have an expert come on the show to talk directly to this topic. So, here to discuss the real deal, and I mean she gets down to it, is cultural sexologist, sexual educator, equity strategist, and practitioner, my dear friend, Mariotta Smith. Hey, it's so good to have you here. Yes, we can clap for her. She's pretty awesome. No, thank you so much for being here. This is so important. And for so long, we've been talking about sex together. Or maybe you've been talking and I've been listening. So you've been at this for a while, but that was a really, really long title.
It's a lot of words to put together.
It is. And so I think that first we should break this down. Okay. So first off, cultural sexologist. Yes. Explain.
So first off, congratulations.
Oh,
I'm so excited for
thank
you. And I'm excited
so
to be here. So cultural sexologist, that is a nice way for me to say that I study human sexuality and behavior, and I do it from a culturally specific lens. So I look at Black sexuality across the spectrum of all the ways that Black folks identify and celebrate and engage in sexuality behavior.
Wow. And you went to school for that? And I mean, obviously you do live, eat, and breathe this, but you went to school for this.
I did. I didn't know what I was doing when I started going to school, but I ended up finishing and figuring out that my path was being an educator, being a sexuality educator, and being someone who advocates for the liberation and freedom of Black folks and being clear about providing accurate medical information for Black people so they can make really informed decisions about their own health outcomes.
I love that. Man, thank God for you. Seriously, because I mean, there's so much that we're going to dive into later about, you know, Black sexuality versus just all the other so-called, you know, sexualities out there, because it is different. It's different for us. And so when you talk about being a sexuality educator, when I hear that, I think sex ed. But you say there's more to that.
There is more to that, and that's a great question. I used to say when we first met back in the day, for folks who don't know, this is my girl. We have a history together. I used to, as you know, do community-focused sexuality education. And so people thought it was like, oh, sex that I got in school. And it's like, no. Actually, what I do is we talk about ways that people can negotiate conversations. We talk about ways that people can learn about contraception and other forms of birth control. We talk about ways that young people can assert themselves around consent and body autonomy and how to have their boundaries respected. So there's a lot that goes into sexuality education that is more than just the act of sex itself.
I'm so glad you broke that down because, I mean, even for me, it was always just like, oh, okay, it's the sex talk. But there is so much more to that. Like, you take certain things for granted around like consensual conversations, which can often seem awkward, but you normalize them in a way that I love, which is another reason why I just adore you and the work that you're doing. You need to know how important it is.
Yes, it is so important to normalize, especially for young people, that they have the right to ask questions. And as parenting people or as trusting adults for young folks, we have the ability to normalize how they can ask questions and have their answers honored and respected, right? So think about it when you were a young person. If you had a question you wanted to ask someone and you kind of didn't want to get the answer because you knew you were going to be uncomfortable or awkward, you would rather go to a friend. And so maybe the friend didn't have the information, but the situation was more comfortable for you.
Right.
So it's important to be able to set a stage, to set a space where young people feel comfortable enough to trust that you're going to honor their question, that you're not going to be rude or be condescending. And even if you don't know what the answer is, you say to them, let's figure it out together.
Absolutely. And as a parent, I am like getting butterflies, although I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And it's the 8-year-old who's like, so, mommy. And I'm like, so, just turn on KATU Channel 2. We're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna figure out a way that parents, we're all in this together. We're gonna figure this out, right?
Yes.
And so, what got you, like seriously, you mentioned that you went to school for this, but you didn't realize what you were getting into until you got into it.
Yeah.
Well, what led you to get into this work?
So I am from I'm from an activist family. My parents here, my grandfather and my grandmother came as part of the Great Migration of Black folks from the South to the West, and they were civil rights activists here in the area. And so I understood that it was, as my grandmother said, it was part of my obligation to serve my community. That's
Yes,
what she said.
yes, ma'am.
And so I was engaged in activism, but I was the kid that always had questions. That was my job. I felt like it was my job to interrogate every situation I found myself in.
I'm sure you made them all very comfortable.
Yes.
Hmm.
And so my mom worked at a medical clinic when I was much younger, and I used to help her set up for the clinics in the evening when I would come from school. And I was so excited to be able to figure out how people would come into clinics and get treatment that made them feel like they were respected, like their concerns were heard, and that they actually had an engagement with their healthcare professional. And I was also someone who had a lot of questions about sexual behavior and why do people make decisions like this, and what happens when you don't get the response that you're looking for. So it was a natural progression for me to find my way
Yeah.
in high school, and that's where it really cemented. And then once I got into undergrad, it became a very direct focus
Right.
of how I wanted to look at Black people and the way that sexuality impacts how we make decisions.
Well, I can't wait to jump into that. But before we do, I want to ask you, when did you first learn about sex? And was it accurate when you first learned it?
Oh my goodness, my mother. So I asked the question, I think I was probably 5 or 6, maybe.
Wow. Okay.
Because I was that kid.
Yep.
I just asked a lot of questions. What I remember most is that there was a book my mother had. I can't remember the name of the book to save my life in this moment, but we colored the book together because they had figures, body figures that showed body parts, and it named the body parts, but they were pencil drawings.
Okay.
And I grew up in a very Afrocentric environment. So I was accustomed to seeing brown and black and melanated bodies around me in all kinds of media. So my mother and I colored the bodies brown while we read the book
I
together.
love that.
And if I had questions that weren't in the book, if she didn't want to answer the questions, my mother was the first person to model this for me. She would say, "I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to come back to you."
Really?
And so I learned early that my questions were valued and that I was going to get an answer. It just may not have been when I wanted it.
Got you. Wow, that's deep. Because I feel like I remember when I had my first conversation with not even my own, with my parents, I mean, with my own kids. And I remember you because I've known you this long and we've been doing this work together this long in the community talking about sexual health and education, that I remember you said, just always tell them the truth. And I was like, okay. So in the back of my mind, a little Mariotta was telling me, tell these babies the truth. And so I appropriately kind of tried to disseminate the information as truthfully as I could with all the discomfort in my spirit.
That's wonderful.
Well, no, this is why you're here, because you help other people be more comfortable and get the answers, to all the questions. And yes, we're talking about sex. So please do not go away, Mariotta. You're going to hang. You're going to hang. We'll be right back with more situations and conversations after a very quick break. Do not go away.
Press release marketing is the solution for small business owners wearing way too many hats. This could be overwhelming for any CEO. We suggest you talk to a professional today about outsourcing your marketing campaigns and strategies. To book a complimentary consult, visit www.justpressrelease.com today.
Situations and Conversations with Trey Renee is sponsored by Black Parent Initiative, learning and growing together so families can thrive. Education Explorers. Parents, with companies starting to bring people back into the office and workspace, count on Education Explorers for safe, quality, reliable, and culturally sound childcare. They have low to no cost spaces available for infants and children up to 4 years old at their 2 locations in Tigard. Don't live in Tigard? No problem. Just ask about their free transportation services in Washington County. Reserve your child's spot now. Contact them online at educationexplorershcc.com or give them a call at 971-266-3646. Education Explorers, childcare you can count on. furniture and decor provided by Home Place Furniture and Design. Get all your furniture and design needs at Home Place Furniture and Design, with 2 locations in Oregon to serve you. Welcome back to Situations and Conversations. I'm Renee, and the situation today is SEX. We're super excited around here to talk about sex with our expert, Mariotta Gary Smith. Okay, so we have some viewer questions because, you all about the questions.
I am. I live for the questions.
I know you do. So we have some viewers who are out here who have some questions. So let's get our first one.
I'm ready.
Hey Trey, Marjorie has a question for you. Why do people in society make it seem cool to have sex?
That's a great question. You know what? People who like to have sex for a lot of reasons, right? It feels good. Pleasure is important. It's a way to express feelings. It's a way to be closer with someone. And those are all valid reasons. And it's also important to understand why you want to have sex and if you're ready, because there are a lot of decisions that need to be made so that you have an experience you want to remember and that you are able to consent to. So while it's important to consider the decisions you want to make, it's also important to consider and understand the outcomes you want as part of your experience.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So and this is a young person obviously asking this about sex being cool. Do you find in your work that kids are still kind of having that pressure to have sex even if they're not necessarily ready or even understand what that's all about?
That's a great question. I think with the age of instant access to information and so much being available, I think it's a little bit different for the younger generation. I do think there is still some element of peer pressure because that's just a natural human experience that happens. But I think young people now are more motivated to have conversations. They're a bit more progressive in their thinking than, say, our generation was. Right. We were the beginning of that information age. These children, these young folks are fully immersed in it. And so it looks and it feels different. But I think being able to have conversation, which is a little bit different for this generation because they're more engaged on a platform or on a device, as opposed to our generation where we actually had to talk to each other and figure it out.
Isn't that right? So it's so different now. Yeah, absolutely. That was a really great answer, though. So I'm sure you got a good nugget out of that one. Okay, let's go on to our next question.
Hey Trey, this is Sylvia. She has a question for you.
How do I let someone know I really like them without having sex?
Great question. There are a lot of ways you can let someone know that you are attracted to them or that you're interested in them. My role, you just tell them. I'm upfront. Just tell someone, I really like you, or I like you because, or I think you're great because, or I enjoy when we spend time together because. Things like that where you direct the conversation about what is important for you or how you feel about that person is really important. You could also write them a note or maybe go on a walk with them and just start a conversation and see how they feel about you. It's important to be clear about your boundaries. So if you want to share how you feel with someone, make sure that you have boundaries in place for yourself about how much you want to share, and also understand that it may not be reciprocated, meaning that they may not feel that way, and that's okay.
Man, where were you when I was growing up? I mean, it's so, because you make it sound so concise and so straightforward, and there's always this hemming and hawing around the topic of sex, especially among kids, also with adults. Let's not, exclude us, because it's still uncomfortable for even, I'm over here fumbling over my words, and I'm grown. Yeah.
It doesn't change. Just because we get older, I call myself a youthful elder because I'm not a kid anymore. I know my role. I know my place.
Right.
And it's still uncomfortable for a lot of folks. It just is.
So let's talk about consent because, you've alluded to that a little bit throughout the show today. And I wonder what consent looks like now. Is it different? Because it used to just be, just say no, and that would be that.
Great question. I think it's a little bit different. For me, consent, it's important if you ask for someone's consent that you get their full enthusiastic consent and permission, and that it's continuous throughout whatever the experience is. So if the person says no, you honor the no. As much as you appreciate the yes, you honor the no, right?
Yeah.
And it's important, and you don't have to keep asking. You can. Some people are very consistent and want to keep asking, but you can, as you're going through play or whatever the situation is, check in. Do you like this? Is there something else I can do? Tell me what you want. All three of those are very easy to incorporate into a conversation about consent and boundaries.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as holding hands.
Holding hands, giving a hug, Especially, I think about young children when people, oh, let me hold the baby, or oh, let me hug, and the child is like, no.
Yeah.
And I trust children. If they don't want you to touch them, they're going to let you know. You honor the child's no.
That is so important, because I feel like culturally we grew up where it was like, come here, baby. And people would be offended if the child didn't give you a for real hug. Like, my kids, for real, my middle, Madison, is a side hugger like nobody's business. She will come in like, it's like uncomfortable, and that's it. And so people would say, oh, you need to teach her better. Some of the elders.
From the side. Like, I understand that, but it's important when you teach young people, and when they're learning in an environment where their body is their own, that they have the right to decide if they want to be hugged, if they want to show affection to someone or not. You begin to ingrain in them that they have the opportunity to set boundaries for themselves, which is really important.
It is, because if you grow up thinking that you owe it to somebody else to make them feel comfortable about your body, then you're going to grow up having that act out over and over again in your life. And I think I agree, it's super important to let kids know that their bodies are their own.
And that they have the right to have their yes or no honored.
Okay, so I have to ask this part. Because I feel like, all the questions during what could be a very intimate moment might ruin it. Am I wrong, or does it? Okay.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that's a very valid assessment. Again, it's about figuring out, having a conversation in the situation. Hey, you see what I did there, right?
I do. I love
So
it.
having a conversation prior to whatever you're doing, and making sure that you're clear, that the communication is clear. It may be the way that you say something to someone. You may need to have safe words. You may need to have keywords that people understand. You might want to make sure, if I'm saying this, what are you hearing? And have the person repeat it back to you. So maybe there's a way where you can figure out how you're speaking the same language so that there isn't confusion, which might impact how you all can be together.
Pineapples. That's supposed to make everybody on edge here. I'm uncomfortable. That's pineapple. Although I actually like pineapples, I might want to use a different fruit. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're having a lot of fun with a very complicated subject. And I want people to know that we are obviously taking it seriously, but it should be normal. This is a normal conversation that should be had between parents and kids, and kids and kids, and parents, and adults, and whomever. Whomever. So I'm really happy to have you here. I know you're going to hang tight, because we have some kids coming up next right here who are really going to want to ask you something.
Oh my goodness. All right.
Okay,
All
you
right,
ready
I'm
for
ready.
that?
I'm ready.
All right, are you guys ready for that? I hope so, because we will be right back with more Situations and Conversations after a quick break. Don't go away. Situations and Conversations with Trey Renee is sponsored by Black Parent Initiative, learning and growing together so families can thrive. Education Explorers. Parents, with companies starting to bring people back into the office and workspace, count on Education Explorers for safe, quality, reliable, and culturally sound childcare. They have low to no cost spaces available for infants and children up to 4 years old at their 2 locations in Tigard. Don't live in Tigard? No problem. Just ask about their free transportation services in Washington County. Reserve your child's spot now. Contact them online at educationexplorershcc.com or give them a call at 971-266-3646. Education Explorers, childcare you can count on. Furniture and decor provided by Home Place Furniture and Design. Get all your furniture and design needs at Home Place Furniture and Design, with 2 locations in Oregon to serve you. Wardrobe for Trey Renee, that's me, provided by Janelle James Boutique, located at Bridgeport Village in Tigard. Styling services were provided by Don Cannon. Situations and Conversations with Trey Renee is shot on location at Island Station Media Lab.
Congratulations to Afternoon Live's Trey Renee, honored with the Emmy Award for Best Host.
Press release marketing is the solution for small business owners wearing way too many hats. This could be overwhelming for any CEO. We suggest you talk to a professional today about outsourcing your marketing campaigns and strategies. To book a complimentary consult, visit www.justpressrelease.com today.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us on Situations and Conversations today. We are talking about sex. That's right, S-E-X. And we have a sex expert, among other things. Mariotta Gary Smith is still with us, along with someone's phone. But we also have kids with us. We welcome back Gabby and Galen from Fabian Middle School, the BSU representing. What's up, guys?
Hi.
Happy to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Are you guys interested in the topic of sex?
Yeah, I have a couple questions.
Ooh,
Me
Gabby, that's what I'm talking about. Go after it, girl. What do you want to know?
What's something about this job you didn't expect?
Oh my gosh. That's the first time I've been asked that, so thank you. One thing about this job that you can expect is people are going to be really surprised that you know so much because they don't know what they don't know. But when you actually go to school for stuff like this, there's a lot that you learn that you get to share with other people, and it's really nice to be able to help folks learn something new. But people are always amazed at how much I know.
Wow. All right.
Great question.
Galen.
How long have you been doing your job?
Another good question. So, if I want to be technical, I've been doing this since I was in high school. I was a peer educator in high school.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So that's a long time. But in terms of a job, I've been doing this since 2006.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a minute.
That's really long.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Gabby.
When do you feel like parents should talk to their kids about like sex ed and different things like that?
Great question. I think it's important for parents to start talking to kids when kids start first asking questions. It's important for young children to know like their body parts and what the names are and what they do. It's important to be age appropriate. Like that's a really fancy term of saying if a 4-year-old is asking what their body part is, tell the 4-year-old the body part. Then don't go into a whole, monologue about it. They just ask what the body part was. Tell the kid the body part. So it's important to start normalizing basic conversations around body parts, functions, names, colors, all those kinds of things at an early age. So as children get older, you can expand the conversation.
Yeah, about the names. Use appropriate names, right? Like actual names. Yeah, I don't want to hear any more little pet names.
No, it's important for young people to know the medically accurate terms for body parts. It's not that you can't have a special love for a part of your body and cherish it. And it's important, say if you go to the doctor, if something happens, that the child knows what the body part is so they can tell the medical professional, this is what happened, or this is what's hurting, or this isn't what feels right.
And I think it helps normalize it too, because everybody doesn't have that same pet name that you may be calling your favorite or your interesting body part. So I love that you make sure to mention that, because I was going to ask you about that, but thank you, because that prompted that. I appreciate y'all. Appreciate you too. Okay, Galen, you're next.
I was going to say, what made you choose this job? Because your job is really interesting.
That's another good question. I chose this job because I originally wanted to be an obstetrician because I love babies, but when I decided that, I also decided I didn't want to be in school that long, but it messed me up because I ended up being in school that long, and I still kind of talk about babies, so I don't know, but that's where I started with it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Good question.
How do you feel about young people doing this job?
I think young people should always be engaged in what matters to them. So if there's a young person who's interested in advocating for sexual health policy for young people to receive like medical care, then a young person should be able to access someone who can show them how to do it. I would love to be able to engage with young folks who want to learn more about sexuality education or about how they can support their communities in having access to information. So I think there are a lot of ways, if young people are interested, that they can get involved and learn how they want to make it their own. There are a lot of ways to do this job. There isn't one way to do it.
And are you open still to going and helping teach this to young people so they can have the accurate information to share with their friends?
I'm always open to doing that. Always open to doing that.
I got another one.
You had another one. Okay, go for it.
How do you feel about our generation having sex?
You know what? I think it is absolutely normal for people who decide to have sex to do that. What I want your generation to be able to do is to have information to make really informed choices, right? So that you can protect yourself if you decide to have sex, so that you know how to have your boundaries respected if you decide to have sex, so that you have opportunity to make the decisions that are going to be best for your situation if you decide to have sex. And if you decide to not have sex, that you still can be with friends that you care about, that you still can feel safe and feel appreciated and honored, and know that your body is yours, that you will be respected, that you are going to be validated for your decisions, and that you get to make those choices for you. Nobody else gets to make that, and that you have people who support you in doing that.
Man, That's good.
That's
That's so good. We could sit here and talk about this.
You know,
for so
I can
long.
always talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, we didn't even get a chance to really touch on the equity piece and why, a lot of times even Black girls, Black women have been super hypersexualized. But that could be another show.
I'll come back.
I can't. You have to come back. But I cannot let you go without asking you this. What kind of tips do you have for parents who are totally uncomfortable, struggling with having this conversation with their kids?
Great question. I actually have 2 books I'd love to tell you about really quick. And these are written by 2 friends of mine, 2 colleagues. This first one is by Dr. Lex James, and she is a marriage and family therapist, and she's based in Philadelphia now. And this book is called These Are My Eyes, This Is My Nose, This Is My Vulva, This Is My Toes.
Lovely. Make sure you put that right over there so everybody can see it.
And so it's a really great book. It's very simple. It teaches about body parts in a very simple way. It talks about people of all abilities, of all colors, of all sizes. So it's a universal book in the sense that it covers a lot of different people, but it's very basic and simple. And so this is a good way for parents to get started, to open the conversation for young people.
Love it.
And then there's another one. This is Sex Positive Talks to Have with Kids, and it's by Melissa Pintor Carnegie, and this is from Sex Positive Families. These are both Black women authors and counselors and educators and therapists. And this is a tip book, a really good book for parents that gives them opportunities to figure out how to have conversations across a lot of ranges of topics, right? So we could talk about consent.
Yes.
We could talk about body parts. You can talk about safe and unsafe touch. You can talk about behaviors and sexual orientation. There's a lot of things in this book that are really helpful, and it's written from a parent's perspective, so you're able to start conversations with your young people.
Girl, if you don't pan that book over here, both of them, because Lord knows I still got these babies and I am not comfortable, but I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there with your help. Thank you guys so much for being here. Appreciate you. Did you get some information?
Yeah.
Excellent. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And Mariotta, I can't thank you enough. You are so wonderful. You have to come back because we have to continue the equity conversation too. I'm here for it. All right, you guys. Man, that's going to do it for this episode of Situations and Conversations. Again, I want to thank my guest, Mariotta Gary Smith, along with our fabulous students, Gabby and Galen. Now, if you have a situation that you want to have a conversation about, please do hit us up. You can find us on social media. You can find us on YouTube. You can hit me up on the website, TreyRenee.com. Just make sure we connect, because what's important to you is also important to all of us. And so as we depart, before we go, I want to wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and make sure you take excellent care of you and others. And when you think me, think we. See ya. Thank you, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Black Parent Initiative, growing at the speed of relationships. Education Explorers, culturally sound, quality childcare you can count on. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.